Welcome to the Rich CELENZA Show. I'm Rich CELENZA. WTF are you talking about? So I kind of got caught off guard the other day. Somebody hit me up regarding the film industry, regarding contacts. And I've been so caught up the last, couple years doing other things regarding this new program I'm starting, YouTube channels, videos, podcasts, that I was just kind of shocked, I guess you could say, because I didn't really realize how I really don't have anything to do any longer with that industry when that's all I used to do and talk about for like 20 years of my life. Even when I was working with my father, I was always trying to connect people. I was always trying to raise funding for film. And it was funny because that between me being a father with my kids and then me being a filmmaker, even though I worked with my father collecting money and vending, I was still known really, especially when social media hit the last 10 years, I guess, as being an independent filmmaker, which was wonderful. I even moved to California for like 6 years to progress into that industry, or at least I thought that's what I wanted to do. And it just kind of hit me out of nowhere that I don't make films anymore. It was kind of weird. I don't know. It was just something that I guess I don't think about anymore, nor do I talk about it anymore. Even me and my production partner, we kind of went our own ways. He went on to do different things, and then I obviously went on to do different things. And I used to go to the Emmys every year. I haven't gone the last couple years. I just thought, from a political view, I just wasn't interested in that. It kind of took a shift, I think, Hollywood, that was aggravating me. It's not because of one way or another of my politics, because I'm not into politics at all. So really, it's been a couple years since I really even talked film or TV. And, I think one of the reasons I'm going to do this is because I want to help people realize that, going after your dream is a wonderful thing. It's something, I always wanted to make films as a young kid. And then finally my uncle, Tony, said, Rich, for somebody who always wanted to make films, you never got around anybody who makes films. He was absolutely right. I'd be writing screenplays, like bullshit ones or ideas, and we'd all be flying to Vegas or flying to the Bahamas or gambling somewhere in Jersey and, whatever I used to do, collecting money, living a entirely different lifestyle, and all I used to do was talk about movies. And then eventually I said, fuck it, I'm going to make my own film. After my first daughter was born, she actually had a liver transplant, and it was a really hard couple years. And I said, you almost lose a daughter because of sickness. And I'm like, look at my daughter here. She may not ever have an opportunity to go after her dreams. And I'm going on 30 years old, and I wasted all this time kind of, I guess, being afraid of going after mine, right? Because that's really what happens to us a lot of times. We're afraid to admit that we have certain things we want to do, but we're either too lazy to go after them or too afraid to fail, I think. Life really comes down to a lot of people being afraid, right? That's really what it comes down to, I think. You're going to be afraid of how people judge you. You're going to be afraid if you fail. All these different things. And also the fear of financial situation. Obviously, what position is that going to put you in financially? Everybody talks about, like, I'm going to go to Hollywood, make movies. You got to realize that really less than 1% make a living at that profession. Most people don't know that. They only look at the two Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, or they look at, the top tier actors, writers, producers that they see making, mainstream films, and they think Hollywood is like that until you go there and you realize it's nothing like that, and you don't realize how much hard work it takes, how you really have to put yourself in the right place at the right time, how smart you have to be, not only in the arts, you not only have to be creative, but you have to have a really good business sense. And if you don't, you better get surrounded by someone who does, because they're either going to take advantage of you, if you do become successful, steal your money, or you're going to sign something that you shouldn't sign or be a part of something you should have never became a part of. And as you know, if you look at a lot of people in the entertainment business, they plummet because they're just not that smart. Or they just never surrounded themselves by the right people. Because even you may be the most artistic or greatest actor in the world, greatest musician, doesn't mean shit. At the end of the day, what are you going to be left with? Because it all comes down to money. You may not realize that at the beginning. A lot of artists are like, no, I don't do this for the money. I don't do this. I only do it because for the love of the art. Well, I got newsflash for you. For you to usually create great art, for the most part, unless maybe you're a painter, you're going to need money to accomplish what you need to accomplish, especially if you want to share your art. If you want to go mainstream, or even if you want to just go local, you still have to have certain outlets to distribute your art. Now, if you want to just stay local in your little hometown, make home-style movies or make little movies, mini, feature, whatever, and spend all your time doing that, God bless you. Most likely you won't survive doing that. You're still going to probably need to spend money on certain equipment. And also, the most valuable thing you have in your life is time. So you're going to be spending a ton of time doing things with really no payback when you finally kind of smarten up and say, hey, I want to make a living doing this because I love doing it and I need to make money to usually pay your bills. I don't care if you're off the grid or not. We all have to eat. We all have to have somewhere to stay, most likely. Now, if you want to go stay with your parents who live in, hypothetically, California and have no bills and be able to go create your own art, God bless you. Most of us aren't in that position. But back to my situation regarding films is I love making independent films. I was very egotistical, thinking I was actually anti-Hollywood. I mean, I love Hollywood as far as the actors, the creativity, and movies. Obviously, that's why I love the industry. But I kind of wanted to always be someone who created something much different. And I guess I still understood the familiarity component, because if you do something extremely different, nobody usually, for the most part, takes an interest in it. They have to have some kind of knowledge of what you're trying to put out there. And I'm not saying it has to be identical, right? It just has to be something similar that a lot of mainstream people like, or even a certain group likes, right? If you go so far off to the left, as far as creativity goes, you're lost. And again, that's your right to do. And you may find an audience, and sometimes you do strike a chord. Say, for instance, the Blair Witch kind of concept comes up. They did something that nobody at the time was doing, and it struck fire, and before you know it, they're on their way. They're called fluke films, and there's fluke art, fluke musicians. If you're going to base your career around flukes or fluke performancing, then you most likely will have a long road ahead of you. Your best bet, truthfully, is getting something that is something you're passionate about, that you know there's a certain type of audience that also appreciates it. I believe that doesn't mean you can't do your own thing way off, left, off the cuff, or whatever. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you want to make a profession out of this business, as far as entertainment, I should say, goes. I shouldn't even categorize it and just say film. I'm talking film, music, fashion, anything. I've been involved with all of them from a creative standpoint. I've made films. I've done some commercials. I've done my own clothing line. I've done a lot of different things. I'm not saying I was extremely successful at all of them, by no means. I've probably failed thousands more times than I succeeded in anything I tried to create. And I think that's what you got to realize, that it is a very daunting process to really become successful. And I guess we all have our own way of looking at successfuls, because a lot of people say, wow, Rich, you did 2 feature films, you got distribution, you got festival market, you did this or that and the other thing. And I look at actually success is the journey along the way. I'm all about the journey. I'm not all about always the end result. I don't think a lot of people realize how much money people spend in time trying to create their art, and how much money they lose and time they lose. You know, you only usually look at the success stories. That's kind of like they talk about war stories or anything. You usually only hear all the wins, right? Or the great performances, even with sporting events. You don't look at all the failures, right? I mean, sometimes you may, but for the most part, we're talking about things that kind of blew us away, that were very unique and prosperous for the most part. And when it comes to certain things, I wanted to actually, I was thinking about writing I have a third book I want to write, a cookbook. It's called Shut Up and Eat. It's an Italian cookbook based on my mother's recipes. She used to cook for the Archdiocese, so I started working on that a couple of years ago after my Wingman book. And my mom, I was going back and forth. I'm like, right, the problem I had with her is she kept writing these goddamn recipes, but like by hand, like, oh, I forgot to add this, and then I forgot to add that, but I don't, all these different things was making me nuts. So yeah, she's making me nuts, and then she said she lost recipes, then she found them, and then she couldn't even understand her own handwriting, or there was my Italian immigrant grandparents, somewhere in Italian, I think. All these different things. And then she wanted to call a couple aunts. This took months and months and months. You know what I mean? It's not hard to do creative things with your parents. I thought it'd be a fun project. It kind of ended up a little bit of a nightmare at times, but I think more on her because she's used to doing things at her own pace. And I'm kind of like, let's get moving, let's set, deadlines, let's get shit done. She's kind of, like, oh yeah, we'll do that when we get together and let's meet up and discuss this. I talked for months about it and she's not getting anything on paper. It was just all talk. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people with the industry, or I guess you could say from a creativity standpoint. A lot of people talk about what they're going to do, but they have nothing to show for it at the end of the day, which is fine. That's life. But back to that other book, I wanted to create a book that's actually called, I don't know what to call it actually, but it was based around how you need money to raise money. And I'm going to get into that right now. A lot of people think, I'll just say making films. They don't realize how much money they're going to need to even get to the point where they can pitch their project. That could be a screenplay, that could be for funding, that could be to other producers, whatever the case may be. I don't care who you are in this day and age. And what's interesting is now technology is making things much easier from the standpoint of being able to create something as a demo, a reel, or anything in that nature, even a short, to show someone. That's great. That's still going to cost money, and it's going to cost time. Most likely you're going to have to hire actors. Again, back to film, and I don't even care if it's music. Music could be different because one of my partners who does some of my stuff with me, he really loves music, but you're still going to need the equipment to make the music sound right. It's not maybe as complicated as film, if you want to shoot film or television or things in that nature, because you have to, usually, even if it's reality shows or documentaries, things, you have to, for one, if it's scripted, you have to have actors. If it's not scripted, you have to have characters even then, or be able to follow them, or different locations and all different things. It takes money. Everything takes money. I don't care what you think you're going to do. So even if you need to write a screenplay, or if you want to option a screenplay, that's going to probably take time and money, even if you have to buy software to use to make it look professional, which is Final Draft. Actually, a good friend of mine actually works at Final Draft. She's great. And also, say you want to start, you want to raise the funding yourself, hypothetically, for a film. I don't care if it's $1 million, $300,000, $10 million. You're going to have to start getting your legalities in order regarding the screenplay. Getting it copyrighted or trademarked through, that's no big deal. That's actually relatively cheap. But you're also, when you start raising funding, you're going to have to get a line producer, most likely, to come up with a budget. That's not cheap. Then you're going to have to now start pitching your project to investors, which is usually you have to wine and dine them. You may have to fly to certain places. You may have to do a lot of different things to get your money, which is all going to cost money. I don't care if you live in LA. I don't care if you live in New York. I don't care where the hell you live. I'm actually heading in a car right now to North Dakota. It's irrelevant. It's going to cost money. Now, if you plan on funding your own projects, which I did, I had some help. I had help from my cousin who actually came in with me, who was wonderful to do that with me. But for the most part, after everything was said and done, I still probably funded 70% and 100% of my time. And you want to talk about money being spent, it never ends, right? Because that's just the way it is. I think a lot of people, when they want to create, what paralyzes them is they think they're going to do it on the real cheap. Oh my God, I can't afford, Final Draft. I'll take my buddy's computer. I'll get it off of him. All right, you kind of dodged a bullet there. Oh, I know a line producer who'll do this for free. Okay, you dodged a bullet there, baby. Okay, I still want to raise funding. Okay, how do you plan on doing that? Well, I'm just going to maybe go to banks. You're most likely going to get rejected. I'm going to probably go to venture capitalists. Good luck. Because now when you start going to these type of people or investors, you're going to have an entertainment lawyer involved because you need to protect yourself. Plus, they have to protect themselves, so you're going to need somebody to represent yourself. Now, again, if you have a lawyer to do that for you as well, God bless. If you can keep going that route, but you're still most likely going to run into where you're going to need money along the way. You may even find investors that says, all right, shoot something short or do this for us, do that. That most likely is going to cost money. Can we see this? Can we see that? Who do you have attached? You may have to do a pay or play deal with actors, right? All these different things. I'm not going to get into the list of all the things that most likely you're going to run across. You need money. And that goes for anything in entertainment. If you want to be a musician, you don't have your own studio, guess what? It's going to cost you money. You don't have certain instruments or you don't have certain artists that you want, or a band, guess what? You got to pay for them. So what I'm trying to get to the point here regarding that is, regarding that book, I should say, is you have to learn a lot of times in your life, not just in the arts, that to do stuff costs money, and it probably costs a lot more money than you think it's going to cost. Even if you put a budget together, it could be even a home that you're building for yourself, your wife, your family. A lot of times people do that and they think, oh, it's only going to take this amount of time for that amount of money. You're usually lying to yourself. If everything goes perfect, that may be the case, but as you know, most of the times, excuse me, things never seem to go perfect. They actually go quite the opposite. So, back to my thing with the film industry. I realize there's a lot of times we have dreams, and my dreams again were making films. And as I look back at my film career, there's a lot of things I would have done different, but a lot of things I wouldn't have either. But the one thing I think about a lot, or I used to, I can't say now, is what did I put other people through because I had such a passion and obsession to make films? I think a lot of my relationships suffered because I was very self-centered and selfish. And I think you don't realize a lot of times when you're an artist, I guess. I never really considered myself a real artist. My father considers himself an artist, but I guess I am an artist. But a lot of what we do takes a toll on others. We just don't realize it. So what I'm here to say is, somebody was asking me, like, not only with connections, they're like, hey, what do you, advice a lot of times in that industry, in entertainment just in general. Because I also have family members, including my father, who was a professional drummer at one time. A lot of my family members are musicians. And I'm here to tell you, if you want to truly become an artist, obviously you have to stay focused. And you have to set, I believe, certain goals, and you have to get it on paper, or at least you have to, if you're a musician, you've got to record it. If you're a filmmaker, again, you're going to have to obviously have a script, most likely. You really got to kick it in the ass, but don't torture everyone else because you're not succeeding. And that goes for anything you want to create in your life. It could be even you trying to get a different degree, or getting any degree. If you're going to become a doctor and a lawyer, a lot of times those type of things, are going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I think a lot of parents, for the most part, are very proud of their kids who want to go on to do those type of things. And most likely, after you graduate or get your degrees, you will go on and most likely have a job, at least in North America, I think, and you may go somewhere else. Wonderful. But when it comes to the arts, unless you're really connected, right? And again, you can get a degree in all different types of things related to entertainment. That's wonderful too. Maybe I should restructure this and say for the independent artist, right? Because there's millions of independent, really, people that make independent art that aren't mainstream, that may or may not want to become mainstream. A lot of them never went to, say, film school, say for a filmmaker. Same with art, same with acting, same with all music. Music, a lot of guys want to create music. They don't even play instruments. Some may be just singers, rappers, whatever the case may be. Learn to not exhaust people. And I think I exhausted a lot of people because I was so stubborn. I even used a lot of my family members in my film, which I think was really fun, and they liked it. Don't get me wrong, that was fun, but at different times it was daunting because of the scheduling and what I kind of put people through at different times. And I even look back at my friend who I wrote one of my lead characters for my first film, Sore Losers, which was about the underground world of gambling in Chicago. He became very religious and he pulled out of it, and I had to jump into it, which was one of the worst things I've ever done and best. As far as the worst, it just took a toll when you got to write, direct, produce a film and be one of the actors in the film. But I knew nobody else could play that role, I think, chemistry-wise with everyone else. So that was not necessarily the greatest thing for me because I was very frustrated all the time, which worked for that character, actually. But that was very frustrating. Would I go back and change that? Maybe, but I just don't know who I'd find to play that role. I'm not saying that I'm a terrific actor. I just had certain ways that I wanted that played. And then on the other end, when I went to edit it, I got to see how I behaved through that entire film, even behind the scenes. Like how friendly I was at some times, how understanding, and other times I was just a total asshole. But if you make films or create art, I'll tell you right now, being a pussy is not going to work. You got to get the shit done. And you have to have a certain expectation. How you want it done, how it's going to get done, when it's going to get done, to the best of your ability, right? You have to have that component, I think. If you're a pushover, maybe that works. I'm not, so I don't know. But I'm out to kick it in the ass and try to bring my vision to, everybody as a unit, especially in film. We all have to be on the same page. We have to have chemistry, and I got to make sure it's being filmed correctly, the audio, film, and I had audio issues myself. But anyways, back to artists. And I think one thing happens also with an artist throughout their life, especially if they become successful, they kind of get locked into something. Because if you make a film and it's successful, they want you to make another film, obviously, because they know that that's something that you can create. And that's wonderful. So if you like sci-fi or you like whatever you like, usually a budget, you're not going to usually at the beginning have a budget to do that, but I don't care what it is. You created something that, say, a certain amount of people saw, and then people are willing to invest more into doing something maybe more elaborate or more mainstream. Wonderful, but I think sometimes, as far as I went, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do things that were actually quite different. Because I wanted to challenge myself, but a lot of people, I think, get pigeonholed, I guess, is that the word? They kind of get locked into something, which is fine, I think, maybe at the beginning of your career, but hypothetically, if you do a second film that you're really not interested in doing and it's very similar to the first, and that's successful, guess what? You're going to probably have to go on to a third. Now, maybe not. But the truth is, you have to make money on whatever you create, even if it's $1. If you show people that you can make money off your art, that people are interested in it, again, you can make $1, even break even. Not bad. Most people lose. 99% of people lose money. Don't let them kid you. If you can make money, even small amounts of money, people will believe in you, right? But a lot of times, they're only going to a lot of times believe in you because they believe in what you've already previously done. It's hard for you to pitch. Say you made a mobster movie, and now all of a sudden I want to do a chick flick movie. Not saying it can't be done once you prove yourself in time, but just be aware of that. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. They don't. A lot of guys I know want to create one thing, and then they're so far off in another. I kind of tell them, hey, the situation is if you're pitching this one thing, and you create it, and it's kind of successful, and you do well, even if it's a festival market or you get distribution, people usually, if you want them to reinvest, are going to, for the most part, usually want to make sure their investment's protected, and they want to make sure you know what you're doing. Now, again, they may be like, hey, I think you did a great mobster movie. Maybe you will do a great chick flick. God bless you. For the most part, that doesn't always work, especially within distribution. And also, you got to look at your audience. It's hard to, you really want to build a certain type of audience. So if you look at certain directors, writers, actors even, they have a certain type of audience that they know works. So you got to think about yourself like that as well, even though you may be a nobody right now. But if you do a horror film, right, and you all of a sudden all these people that start loving your stuff, it's horror driven, and the next thing you're doing is a Hallmark love story for television, are those people going to transfer over? I would say no, and vice versa. So something to just think about regarding that. And I learned this in music, which one of the reasons I never liked music is that if you create music, for one, dealing with a band is really hard. I can't imagine and I love all my friends, family members. I love hanging out with them as much as I can. But if I have to be married to 3, 4, 5 different other people constantly, especially if you plan on making money, you're going to have to tour most likely. Most likely. Not always, but most likely. But even when I was creating my films, I loved having an editor. I loved having a separate camera guy. If I wasn't shooting it, I was doing a lot of the audio. Actors. I love the camaraderie. Is that the word? Camaraderie? I screw up certain words. But I love the unit, everybody coming together to create things. That's wonderful. But I can't say that if I was a musician and I have a band and it starts to become successful, that I have to be locked in with this band for numerous amounts of years. Because the truth is, for the most part, it's hard to build it takes a long time to, get a band, create an album, 1 or 2, tour, all these type of things, build momentum. It's years and years and years. For the most part, sometimes it may happen much quicker, but that's the truth. Just like a film, usually they say takes an average could be from 5 to 7 years by the time you come up with the idea, write the script, get the funding. Even Hollywood films, they could take years and years. Same with bands. And I think what happens with bands is, one, I couldn't be with the same band members all the time because I like to create different things with different people. Sure, I'd like to use the same editor, my cousin, for instance. That's wonderful as that goes. But that doesn't mean I have to, I'm not editing with him constantly every day for years or touring with him for years. I go make a film with Otto and I come back and we edit a film and then I go do my thing. With a band, especially if it becomes successful, you're locked into this band. Now, a lot of times artists do go solo. Wonderful for the most part. Most don't succeed. Very few. I mean, if you're going to talk about, really mainstream guys, frontmen and things of that nature, but the band's got to stay together. You also, I believe, get locked into creating a certain type of music, and it's hard to break away from that. And I think the reason being is that's what's expected of you. Some artists can do it. I'm not going to always say, don't take everything I say like that's the only way it is. It's not. Some artists can come up with an album or two and it's a certain way, and then they come up with another album that's completely different or what they want to do, and it's very successful. Somebody like Queen or somebody like that who really pushes the bound, like who could test different things. They were amazing in general. That's far and few between. But what happens is you get locked in, and what I find quite interesting with people is, when you're judging artists, especially musicians, even directors too, a lot of movies, they're like, oh my God, it's the same movie or it's the same music. Oh, I heard that album. It's just like their previous one. Well, that's what people are buying, you got to understand. And they're trying to accommodate you. Now, if they went and did something different, you'd be like, what the hell's that? Why are they playing that type of music? The music I like that they played sound like this. So you kind of get stuck, right? The other thing is, this is the one thing I couldn't stand, because my dad owning a nightclub, the bands would come in. He'd have 3 bands a night and comedians in between, which was outstanding. Because when the bands would be breaking down their equipment and setting up, he'd have a comedian out there and it would keep the audience entertained so they wouldn't leave. So you'd come and see your band and then leave. He'd be like, no. So you'd lock in, watch the comedian, laugh your ass off, get another drink, and then the next band would come out, and then you'd hopefully attach yourself to that band, stay for that one, then the other one. It's a really brilliant idea. Back in the 70s, my father was doing that. But when bands would come in, they'd want to rehearse. They would rehearse one song for hours sometimes. I'd want to kill myself, whatever, or rehearse, certain albums or whatever they were doing. And they weren't even doing their own music. I, for one, couldn't see me constantly having to play other people's music. Now, I played the drums when I was in kindergarten, so my father would put on certain bands and he'd want me to play with them like he does. That seemed kind of fun. And I guess getting together and jamming with music, maybe somebody else gets different, they just feel different when they're doing that. They may feel alive, stimulated, whatever it brings to the table for them. God bless. But for me to, one, always have to play other people's music for a gig to get paid would aggravate me. Number 2, if I did, say, hypothetically, make a successful album or a couple songs, I'd be locked into playing that fucking song for the rest of my life. You look at James Taylor, you look at certain artists with famous songs, Carole King or all these people. I'm kind of dating myself. But anyway, I saw Carole King live. She was amazing. But my point being is, which I'm sure they may love playing that song in front of the public. They love getting the big paycheck when they perform, maybe. I think for me, I need constant change. I need to be evolving. I couldn't come up with if I had to play the song Fire and Rain, back to I like he's probably played that song. I don't know how many thousands upon thousands. And I think one of the things they start doing drugs and alcohol is, I think, and I've talked to other artists, and this isn't every artist, I think they get bored and they want to get a rush like they did before, or just feel a certain way while playing that music, and I think they just get bored. So drugs, when they're on stage, may stimulate them, and sometimes it helps them, maybe creativity-wise. I don't know. But my point being, that's one thing I always found quite interesting about about music. And same with movies, a lot of people keep expecting directors or even performers, as far as actors go, to keep doing the same thing because that's what you like. And don't get me wrong, you got Tom Cruise or these people doing Mission Impossible, and it always seems to work. God bless. But there's a lot more to that than just him. Obviously, special effects, other actors, screenplay, stunts. There's a lot going into that. And that, again, is 1 out of a billion, right, to have the career he has had. But yeah, anyway, so I just found it quite interesting that I kind of fell out of the film dialogue, I guess you could say. I don't really talk to anybody about film. I don't email anybody. I've really fell off the grid with that. And I think if you're listening to this, it may happen to you if you're an artist or you're not an artist, where you do certain things in your life, and it doesn't mean at the end it's always the end either. Like, it doesn't mean that I don't want to maybe go back and make films. I just think I needed a break, and I needed to, I think, and I started to discover, give other people a break. You know, a lot of times when I sit down to dinner, especially when I was married or with everybody, all they wanted to do was talk to me about movies. And at the beginning of your career, you love it because you love movies. You're like, movie. Yeah, let's talk about this movie, that movie, how to make movies, all that, what you're going through, shooting locations. I don't care if it was my mother, my father, anybody was excited. Then after a long period of time, I realized it was frustrating other people because no matter where I went, that's all they wanted to talk about. And at the same time, it was exhausting me. That's what I was trying to say earlier again. Kind of be aware. And if you're really obsessed with films, try to, I would say most likely, it doesn't mean that you have to move to LA. They're obsessed with film. There's no question about it. But a lot of films aren't being shot there, but a lot of business is being done there. That's what you got to realize. That's still where a lot of the deals are going down. Just like if you want to do some theater, go to New York. Chicago's okay, Cleveland as well. But if you want to do music, now music, I think, is just kind of everywhere, truthfully, in my opinion. They're all coming out of everywhere. You know, the woodwork. You don't know which artist is coming out of where. And it seems like music's always evolving and changing, too. So, alrighty. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for listening to the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? I got a YouTube channel out there. I got a Mastering Self-Confidence program out there. And I got a bunch of shit out there. You can just Google my name. But take care. I wish you nothing but the best.